Thought for 2 metros 13 s et tells himself this is only temporary. The city a maze must learn by touch. Metal leaves, sour wind, the scrap of cardboard on brick. David Okoro keeps one hand over his stomach to quiet it, the other prying open a vein the capit chop can't forth. Somewhere in this alley, thinks, is the paper that believes in him. 2 pages. Font, a lifetime of proof. The thieves slipped away like a bird yesterday, snatched by Augustus a checkbus times. Watched it cartwheel down the street, to embarrassed to chase it then, to broke to reprint it now. Come on, whispers, now feeling the cold bite his fingers. Don't make me start over. Please be here. Has started over too many times to count. Interviews become rituals of politesse and doubt. Where are you really from? They asked with a smile. We love your energy, but we're going in another direction. You speak so well. Are you sure you fit our culture? Another direction was always somewhere I wasn't allowed to walk. And else, lifts a black bar, and another raises that makes his mouth water and clench at onfe. He has grown skilled at not being seen. Security guards look through him or look only at him. Doors open for certain surnames. He's hardens on contact. He remembers an unpaid internship that would have led to everything, if he could have afforded free. A town flyer brushes his soul. Careers fair, invite only. He laughs on a dry click. The bin yields a crushed folder. He opens it with careful fingers. Not his. He severs, shoulders brushing cold steel. Damp clings to his calves. He catalogs what he can control. His posture, his breath, the neatness of his thoughts. He refuses to let the city write him in past tense. 2 pages, he says. 2 pages and by name. He imagines a line, scholarships end. Code grot that made a process quick. A cap thrown into huner. He had believed education was a key. No unexplained lacks multiply. Plastic crackles under his palm. He pulls out a sleeve clouded with grime. Inside, edges soft, letters smooth-head. His name stirs up, patient. David. He wants to cry from relief and fury. He smooths the page against his thigh. Breathes on him as if warming a friend back to life. He can hear his mother's voice through memory, careful and steady. Carry yourself tall, my son. Don't let them serve you. I'm trying, he answers the air. I'm still trying. He steps from the bin, straightens his back, folds the rescued papers into his jacket like a frail earth. Out on the street, engines murmur, the alt moving through the night. Headlights was the alley with as a tide. Tires hashed to a stop near the curve. A tinted window lowers, and laughter, brief, expensive, careless, spills toward him, now finding the softest place to land. The headlights stood fixed on him, bleaching the alley into cruel exposure. David froze, his hand still pressed against the pocket where the damp feather rested, as if shielding a secret. The engine purred, a deep velvet growl, and from the car's lowered window came the kind of laughter that don't need a yoke. It only needs a victim. A woman's voice, crisp and practiced, carried above the noise. Look at him, so he said, her tone dripping with amusement. Imagine being so desperate you're digging in garbage for a job. Another ripple of laughter followed, from unseen passengers. David's chest tightened. He had endured slights whispered at interview tables, dismissive smirks on shop floors, jokes dressed up as compliments. But this was different, public, deliberate, theatrical cruelty. He turned slightly, and hoped to glimpse her. A woman in a tailored coat of pale cashmere, hair perfectly set, her jewelry catching the street light. Her eyes flicked over him like a merchant inspecting spoiled fruit. He thought to answer, to let fury spilling words, but his throat lacked. What could they say that boldn't evit voices? His silence became their permission. Say smirkel wider, knowing the imbalance of power, that her car, her veiled, her whiteness shielded her from consequence. Don't worry, so added. Her voice pitched for her companions more than him. I'm sure someone out there needs determination. Punto. The word landed like spit. A passenger chuckled. Another murmured something about ambition in the wrong places. The car's interior glowed briefly as a lighter sparked. Smoke curled out, mixing with the winter air. David's hands clenched. He wanted to vanish into the brick, but champagne him in place. His theve, frail and wrinkled, seemed to burn inside his pocket. He felt it wasn't a used paper now. It was him, crumpled, discarded, laughed at. A different voice rose inside him, his own, but distant. Why do you let them reduce you to trust? But Fear answered quickly. Because one wrong word, one wrong move, and you become more than poor. You become dangerous, a problem, a headline. He lowered his gas, unwilling to give them the satisfaction of brokenness, yet unable to summon defiance. Vivienne Harper, though he didn't know her name yet, leaned back and laughed again. Not the sound of humor, but of cruelty rehearsed until it was instinct. Then the car rolled forward, tears hissing against wet asphalt, leaving the edge of mockery veined like a stone. David exhaled, finally moving, pressing his forehead briefly to the wall. The bricks were cold, steady, something solid when everything else wavered. He drew the theve out, looked at its smooth letters. He could almost hear them laughing at the pageto. He folded it tighter, hatched it deeper in his jacket, and stepped out of the alley. Above him, city lights blinked indifferently. Somewhere, far from the alley, doors were opening for people like her. He walked home with shoulders stiff, the laughter still lied under his skin like splinters. By the time he reached his street, silence had replaced charm, but silence can be heavier than words. He unlocked his door, and in the dim hall waited the faint smell of stew, and the careful voice of someone who still believed there was worth feedings. The door cracked as David pushed it open, its swollen frame resisting before giving way. Inside, the hall was smelled faintly of onions and old wood, the kind of scent that clung to walls and spoke of years lived modestly. He stood there for a moment, letting the silence wrap around him. The laughter from the alley still echoed, ghost-like, trailing him up the dim stairwell. His room was barely larger than a storage closet, a narrow bed, a leaning desk, and a single chair with one leg shorter than the rest. The paint peeled in tired curls, and the radiator clicked but never worked the knob. Yet, it was shelter. He closed the door gently, almost apologetically, as if not to walk the room itself. He sat on the bed and unfolded his theve with slow, careful hands. The creases ran across his name like scars. In the yellow light, the paper looked even more battered, but he read through every line as though searching for proof of himself. A first-class degree, certificates, honors, a project on the prize by a professor. Achievements stacked neatly, yet never enough. His mind replayed the rituals of disappointment. Interview rooms with polite smiles that froze the moment he walked in. Eyes that flickered to his skin before his words. Rejections couched in soft language. An excellent candidate, but not the right fit. Each letter had the same shape, no. Had mimicized the rhythm, the sting dulled but never gone. Sometimes he wondered if his very voice betrayed him. He had practiced neutral tones, softened consonants, trimmed away the cadence of his heritage. Still, doors stood shut. He thought of his parents' pride, the sacrifices they made for him to study abroad. How would they tell them the dream they had banked their hopes on was now shriveling in a rented room? A knock broke the spiral. David. The voice was warm, lined with years. Ms. Ceballo, his landlady, shuffled in before a cold answer, carrying a small bowl. Steam curled from it, fragrant with pepper and tomatoes. You haven't eaten, so he said, placing it on his desk. Her eyes, dim with age, still caught the truth in him. She didn't ask where he had been. She didn't need to. She saw the fatigue in his shoulders. Thank you, ma, he murmured, his throat tight. Still waved of his gratitude. Eat. A man cannot fight life on an empty stomach. So he pat his arm gently before leaving, the door closing with the softness of understanding. He lifted the spoon, the act of the food grounding him. For a moment, kindness filled the cracks left by cruelty. Yet, even as he ate, the silence pressed back in, heavier now, silence of doors not opened, of voices that decided his word before hearing him. Outside, fan traffic hummed. A placer the empty bowl aside, lay back on his mattress, and stared at the ceiling. His eyes stayed open long after night of the city, waiting for sleep to erase laughter that still clung to his ears, and aware that somewhere else, voices had already begun to carry his story farther than a could imagine. David woke the next morning to the usual dim light creeping through the thin curtains, but something in the air felt different, an unease, as if the silence outside his room had been disturbed. He reached for his phone, expecting the emptiness of missed calls, but instead a flood of notifications blinked back at him. Messages, mentions, strangers, words filling his screen. As courtesy. But as the day unfolded, the offers multiplied. Not charity, not pity, positions that matched his qualifications, places where his talents were needed. For once, the world wasn't asking him to sarink. It was asking what a cold build. Still, the decision was heavy. Taking a hope was survival, but standing still in silence had nearly cost him his voice. Jamal visited that evening, finding David surrounded by open laptops and paper letters. Looks like they were finally seeing you, Jamal said, smiling. David nodded, weary but steady. Yeah, but it's not just about me anymore. In the weeks that followed, David chose carefully. He accepted a role at a firm committed to equity, one where diversity wasn't a slogan but a practice. On his first day, as he walked through the glass doors, he carried his CV in a neat folder, not as a lifeline, but as a reminder of what he had survived. Meanwhile, Vivienne Harper slipped into obscurity. The woman whose laughter on the commanded rooms now watched from headlines so no longer controlled. Boycotts gutted her empire. Interviews dried up. She issued apologies no one trusted. Her name now shorthand for arrogance exposed. From her mansion's window, so immediately in David's face on the news again. Not bent in an alley, but standing at a podium, speaking to students about dignity and resilience. Because David didn't stop at employment. With Jamal at his side, he began visiting schools, community centers, small gatherings where young people carried the same questions he once did. Am I enough? Do I belong? His answer was steady now. Yes, the world might try to convince you otherwise, but your worth isn't theirs to define. His voice carried further esteem, strengthened by the echoes of others who shared their truths. What once felt like isolation grew into solidarity, a chorus that could no longer be silenced. One evening, after addressing a packed hall, David stepped outside into the cooler. The city lights blinked around him, the same indifferent lights that once shone on his humiliation. But now they seemed less distant, as though reflecting his fear back at him. Jamal joined him, clapping him on the back. You've come a long way from that alley, Jamal said. David exhaled, a slow smile forming. Not just me. A lo fuese. He looked ahead, not to garbage bins or closed doors, but to streets alive with possibility. From ashes he had risen, not as a symbol of suffering, but as proof that dignity, once reclaimed, could set entire communities alight. And this time, the city was watching differently.